What do you think people get the most wrong about Russ?
Probably is turnover suppression. If you're going to dribble and pass with that volume, you're going to have relatively high turnover rate. I mean, turnover rate stuff is a pretty flawed stat because it's just the highest turnover rate players of all time are composed of pass first players simply because of the fact that it doesn't account for assists or passing in general. It's just turnovers relative to your scoring usage. So when you think about Russ and when you take Russ and how large his playmaking volume is, he had one of the largest playmaking loads in NBA history, and you rip that apart from turnover rate, you just look at turnover rate, obviously it's going to skew him in a bad light. But when you look at adjusted turnover rate, which, takes into account potential assists, it's pretty good. And when you go to NBARedraft.com and you look at his offensive turnover influence, it's very strong. So, like, his ability to dribble and pass a ton while being relatively low turnover, I think is definitely underrated. And he makes a couple of bad passes. Has some poor decisions here and there. But that's pretty inevitable with how high of an offensive load he took on throughout his career. I think he's a very, very high field player, has very strong cognition, and utilized that field and that cognition to suppress turnovers. Or at least he did that during the peak of his career. And I think that's probably the most underrated part.
I agree that like his feel for the game, like getting reduced to like a super athlete with no feel, I think is where they, kind of get it wrong most. Today, we are learning basketball with Maurya Kumpatla at the Flare Screen on Twitter. Check out his work on the Swish Theory website. We are here to celebrate Russell Westbrook's career. I mean, one of the all-time greats, hangs up the jersey kind of early. It felt like a little premature, but on his own terms at the same time. We don't have to, there's no old washed Westbrook in a random jersey meme at this point, like so many greats had to. So at least he controls that half. He got to end on his own terms. And, off the top, 2016-17 MVP, 2 scoring titles, 3 assist titles, 2 All-Star Game MVPs, 9 All-NBA selections, 9 All-Star Game selections, and a spot on the NBA's 75th anniversary team via Bleacher Report article that was highlighting his career. And that just, tip of the iceberg on his accolades on the resume. But we're excited to just celebrate all things Russ, the full career that he did and what he meant to the game and how polarizing he was in the media. And then, check in with OKC, the offseason. Obviously, Westbrook spent most of his career there, winning all these awards. So we're going to check in there and what happened against the Spurs, how they rebound with the draft and moving forward with all these offseason moves. Presti's comments and your thoughts on that. And, maybe if we have time at the end, we're going to hit a 2020 NBA redraft to, go deep on what order we would redraft the 2020 NBA draft class. But first, how are you doing today, Maurya?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Excited to hop back on the pod. I think it's definitely been a while since I've hopped on. It's always a fun time. Looking forward to, celebrating Russ. He's one of the main reasons I got into basketball and became a fan of the Thunder in the first place. And we'll go from there, talk about the draft, maybe get into a redraft like you said. So looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. That's why I wanted to have you on, because you understand what he means to OKC, to the fans of the Thunder, to the game of basketball, the good and the bad that comes with his game. Maybe that 90-10 rule that infamously kind of followed him around. But he was just so great in so many aspects. It just didn't matter most of the time. And I don't know if there's any one spot you want to begin. To prepare for this pod, I'm fresh off a top 75 Westbrook highlight YouTube video, so where it's just like his best plays. And I love how half of them are like him crossing over through, splitting up a pick and roll defense, like splitting the D with a crossover and just tomahawk power jam on 40 of them along with, you come off watching that, you think he's like the greatest player of all time because it's only highlights. It's only powerful slams, tomahawk, hammer dunks, insane pull-up threes. That I love how Oladipo described Westbrook's confidence, that just rubbed off on him. And Oladipo credits his the year Westbrook won MVP. Ola was a sidekick, and Ola credits Westbrook's mentality all across the board, with that pull-up shooting confidence to how he talks to the media, everything, his whole personality. And Ola kind of adopted that, and that was Ola's All-NBA, all-defensive year with the Pacers the next year after that trade. And he credits that mentality. So that comes to mind of Giannis credits his mentality too, of the scowl and the meanness. Russ has an impact on these guys of the way he plays and what he means just the other players. I don't even know where to begin, but just to top off, maybe we go through his career a little bit and all that. But let's start with what he means to Oklahoma City as a Thunder fan. Just, what does Westbrook mean to the community, to the city, basketball player, as a person?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can speak too much towards the community in the city because I don't love it. I don't live in Oklahoma City and never have, but at least from the outside looking in, he's invested. He's an investor in the new arena, and he's he was obviously a big part of the community when he was a part of the team, and he's continued to play small parts here and there in the community where he can, even after getting traded from the Thunder. So I'm sure he means a ton to the community in the city. And if you talk to anyone who's lived in Oklahoma City for a decade or so, they would probably speak even more highly of him. And as far as the team goes, yeah, I mean, I think you described his impacts pretty well. If you want to be extremely successful in life, just any department, I think you have to have. If you want to be extremely successful and you want to push barriers, which are two things that Russ definitely did, you have to have a level of delusional you have to have self confidence. It's a sort of delusional level, and be willing
That irrational confidence,
yeah,
the swaggy P of it all.
yeah, no, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And you just have to be ruthless and be willing to break barriers. And I saw a tweet saying that they're that every player has strengths and weaknesses, and every player has things they can and can't do, but no one tried to push the boundaries and do every single thing at an elite level like Russ did. He tried doing everything possible on the court and did it with extreme confidence. So it's definitely it's a fun watch sometimes. It's a hard watch sometimes, but I think that level of self confidence, that level, it's just how much he tries to push the barriers is something that I can learn from, and anyone can learn from if they're trying to be great in their field. And as a basketball player, obviously incredible basketball player. He's one of the greatest offensive shooting influencers in our APM history. He did that by getting a ton of getting a ton of shots up, passing a ton while maintaining strong turnover economy and maintaining good defensive activity. He had really good defensive turnover rates, good steal rates too. I think that's a good exemplar of how much activity he's able to maintain across both ends. The fact that he continues to be able to get a ton of steals and suppress turnovers while being so active on offense. And yeah, for me personally, him and Paul George were the reasons that I became an Oklahoma City Thunder fan in the 2018-19 season. I started watching basketball, and honestly, if it was any other season, I might have became a fan of the Grizzlies because I live in Memphis. But it was a bit of a rough season. That was the season they were tanking for Ja, and yeah, PG and Russ, that dude caught my eye, captivated my eye, caught myself tuning into every Thunder game. After I watched them for like one second half. At that point, I thought they were like the best duo in the league, and we were going to win a championship. Obviously, it didn't end up happening, but he was a great player to watch. I'm glad I was able to catch him towards the end of his peak, and he brought me towards fandom with the Thunder, which has been really fun. So it means a lot to the community in Oklahoma City. He's a big part of the team. I'm sure he continue to be have a foot in the circle in both areas. Great player, great person. Yeah.
Yeah, just incredible personality, and you can tell the community adores him as a person and a player, and obviously he's bounced around the league, but he'll be a Thunder legend in Oklahoma City forever for his work in the community and play on the court. But before he got drafted, back-to-back Final Fours with UCLA, entered the draft number 4 pick in the 2008 draft. Happened to be the Thunder's first year after the move from Seattle. made the Western Conference Finals in his third season, the NBA Finals in his fourth season, hit the Western Conference Finals 4 times with KD and Russ. And that's the first thing I remember about that team was just those epic series. Speaking of Memphis, Grizzlies versus Thunder, a grit and grind against the Thunder in 2011, 2012, and like the Spurs and the Lakers. That was one thing that stood out. Kobe's Lakers, Duncan Spurs, you kind of forget they've been in the league so long that like when they were babies coming up in the league, yeah, it was Russ, Harden, and KD on one team, in their draft rookie year or sophomore, junior, third year in the league, going against like prime Kobe and Duncan and LeBron and all these guys. They arrived so early, like famously compared to Penny and Shaq in that way that, they make the finals early with all this talent. And, it's all that what ended up being the best of the times for the team. But, just a magical what if of what could have happened if those three stayed together. I'll pull up some data viz in a minute that we had talked about before the pod where we just to highlight his playmaking. But I want to hit some of these accolades and stats just to get through them, because you kind of said it like as well. Like he's known as this thunderous force to the rim. Everyone knows like the power that and electric explosiveness that peak Russ to this day plays with. That's why I said it even felt like he retired a little early. Like the athleticism might have not been 100% peak Russ anymore, but he's still more athletic or more, high flying, bouncy than a lot of these guys that are playing in today's age. So that just highlights his durability and athleticism and taking care of his body as well. But I just wanted to highlight kind of not just his athletic force, but kind of everything else. Like you hit on some of it, and there's some great stats via NBA.com. Like he's one of two players along with LeBron that are top 15 all time in points, assists, and steals. He's one of the best paint forces and paint and spray kick out forces in NBA history. Just one of the best playmakers. Someone mentioned Jason Kidd for some comparisons for all time, and we don't have to compare them all time, but I think what stood out in the comparison was like they're both incredible rebounders, maybe one of the best rebounding pair of guards of all time, and then obviously some incredible playmaking. You mentioned this turnover suppression. There was one playoff run where it was like, I don't have it in front of me, but it was like 50% assist percentage or 52% assist percentage, something crazy. Mm-hmm. And like a very low turnover percentage, like 10% or something insane like that. And that was part of his playoff run. Mm-hmm. To get through some of these NBA stats, all-time triple-double leader, regular season, and including postseason at the time, 221 triple-doubles, tied with Nikola Jokic. Jokic might take those, but, at the time, I just saw the game where he broke Oscar Robertson's record, or at least the end of the game, where they're down by like 10 or 15. He has the 42nd triple-double of the season, breaks the record, and then he like scores or creates like every bucket for the Thunder, including the game-winning buzzer-beating three with no time on the clock for a deep off-screen three. Mm-hmm. He had quite a few of those off-screen threes, and you mentioned the irrational confidence of it all. We'll get to some more stats here in a second, but what were there any like individual Russ moments that were just kind of your favorite as a fan, or your whether it's an analyst you thought it was the best, very smart play, or just as a fan you thought was incredible?
The most vivid, again, I caught him towards the end of his peak. So when you ask me that question, my mind goes back to moments that I watched through highlight reels, but never watched live, like that game winner, or that that shot against Kobe. Kobe and Lakers, the flip shot where banked it and he started young. But if I had to point something out live, it would probably be the monster game he had in the playoffs against Portland. I think it was like 20-point triple-double or something. The one game they won in that playoff series, and he started rocking the baby in those baby blue OKC uniforms. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty loud memory. That was definitely a happy memory I had as a first-year Thunder fan. Didn't end up winning the series, but that was a fun game.
No doubt. I mean, so many classic celebrations, the rock the baby, the like crab walking he'll do after a big play, or the chest pounding. And we talked about kind of like, the excitement of it all that other players also gravitate to.
Mhm.
Like just to highlight how great he was at so many different things. And a lot of things that we look for now, like other than the shooting efficiency that everyone kind of like piles on to him about, maybe we'll get to in a second of how he was talked about in the media. He was what a lot of people look for nowadays in terms of like getting to the rim at will, creating threes like no other, forcing steals like you talked about, like high assists, low turnovers for the most part in a lot of some of these seasons at the peak. But just to highlight some of it, he might be the best rebounding guard of all time. He has the most career rebounds for any guard in NBA history. One of four players to have averaged 20 points, 6.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists over 100 playoff games or more, with LeBron, Jokic, and Larry Bird. He might be the best paint force guard of all time. He has 12,000 career points in the paint, the most of any guard in the 30 years in shot location data, and had 15 seasons of at least 500 points in the paint, also the most among guards, with only D Wade, Tony Parker, and AI being in the double digits with him behind him, and only Wade, who had 1,100 dunks, is the only guard with more dunks than Russ, 700 over the 30 years. A little surprising on that one. Good for Wade, like really racking up those dunks. Yeah. And his 5,000 fast break points are the second most of any player in the 30 years in which fast break points have been tracked. So, like, one of the top fast break players, paint forces, rebounders, 3-point assists and dunk assists. I didn't even mention that. His 2,000 assists on dunks are the second most of any player in 30 years. His 2,800 assists on threes are the fourth most of any players in 30 years. So he's like an efficient shot creating machine. And that kind of leads me to some of these data viz I made that highlights him as something of a Robin. And I mean that as a compliment, where Robin Westbrook was the name of an article I kind of wrote in 2021 that highlights his play next to a co-star who also happens to be a sniper 3-point shooter, because I think that was when we got the best version of Russ, because this only goes to 2021, and this is PIPM data, and I'll bring up some shooting data in a second as well. But when he played with a 3-point sniper co-star, they often had the best season of their career, especially as scorers and shooters. Kevin Durant in 2014, career high 32 points a game, led the league in points, usage, points per game, shots, BPM, won MVP, first team. And in Kevin Durant's entire tenure in OKC with Westbrook, he won MVP, All-NBA second team once, 5-time All-NBA first, 6-time top 5 BPM, and 6-time top 5 MVP finish. Moved to Paul George in 2019, career highs in points per game, steals, rebounds, shot attempts, 3-point attempts, free throw attempts. Steals league leader, all defense first team, all NBA first team, third MVP, finished all NBA third team, and second in steals the year prior. And then James Harden 2020 in Houston. Harden had a career high true shooting percentage, 2-point percentage, free throw attempts and free throws, and second best of his career in points, shots, threes, steals. Bradley Beal the next year in 21, career high in points, usage, 49% in field goal percentage, in shots, threes, 3-point rate. And there's some more that say how great their on-off ratings were as well. The one I have visualized is PIPM. So the faces you can actually see are the years that these players played with Russ. So their most impactful years for at least Kevin Durant and Paul George here were playing with Russell Westbrook. And there's also one with Harden right here as well, that hiding behind some of these KDs at the time. And again, this is as of 2021. But most of his peak, I would say, involved here. Another player that also saw some of these was LeBron. Saw some like great efficiency numbers as well, but I don't have those at the time. And there was one other visual that just wanted to highlight for the same thing. These are their catch and shoot efficiencies for these other players, that these co-stars that were 3-point snipers at the time. So I know I just threw a lot of data at you. Was there anything that kind of caught your eye for the most part? Because the point there was that, like, while the triple-double year, as Tracy McGrady called it, he said he might be the best individual season of all time. Pretty sure they had to, what was it? They rewrote the BPM calculation because he like broke it. It was so unfair. Like, they thought it was unfair. Like, he was breaking the stat. Like, so they had to fix it. So Russ wasn't breaking it. Is like, okay, or he just was a certain amount of impactful. But, what are your thoughts on all these stats? And did anything stand out? Because I know I threw a lot at you, but the point was he accentuates 3-point shooting co-stars, and that might be where I think Russ not only was like people think he's like all inefficient and all bad decisions or something when they criticize him, and when it comes to his actual impact, like when he had a co-star that was a 3-point sniper, that was a pretty lethal duo offensively. And normally the co-star was like having the best career of his or year of his career. So that means he must be playing with a heck of a point guard to set him up.
Yeah, no, I think definitely he's a extraordinary shot creator, extraordinary playmaker. He was one of the, I think if you look at the 6 factors of RPM on NBA RPM.com, his offensive shooting influence was top in the league. Like I think second among guards behind Steph Curry. He just so happened to play at the same time as one of the greatest guards ever. One of the greatest offensive shooting influence in guards ever. But he reached like 6 offensive shooting RPM, which is incredible, and a lot of it was due to how much volume he's able to take on as a passer, and how many threes he's able to create, how many dunks he's able to create, like you said. So definitely, I think his playmaking, he's one of the greatest playmakers ever, and that's a large part of why he was one of the best offensive shooting influencers in the NBA at his peak. And all of it led to multiple consecutive top 5 finishes in offensive RPM at his peak. So definitely a tremendous playmaker, and that helped drive a tremendous amount of value in terms of his offensive shooting impact. And I think most of the co-stars that he played with who operated on the perimeter ended up having their most impactful season as a basketball player because they're just better optimized with a playmaker like Russ on the court. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think you worded everything pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like his decision making, while erratic, like became underrated for the 10% bad or whatever instead. And shifting to a little bit of how he was covered, and I was guilty of some of this too. For me, I think it was the MVP debate that really spiraled out of control with him versus Harden versus Kawhi, and it was even LeBron at the time, even though I think he ended up with like one or two votes. Basically, to me, that was one big thing that kind of made him a polarizing name and topic from then on out. And the negatives of what essentially was like nitpicking, like where an MVP debate is, these are the best players in the world. How do we choose who to give the MVP award to? Because there's no defined way. So there's a debate of best player or best player on the best team or most impactful player or whatever debate you want, logic you want, because it's up to debate. That's the whole point. But that's nitpicking among the best. Like, yeah, Harden. Well, I made the debate that year too that Harden and maybe even Kawhi were just as or were more impactful to winning. And Harden said all this, historic offense at the same time, efficiency wise, with at the time for team stats. So that, I think was, worth noting and definitely had an MVP case and just as worthy. But, especially the more I look back at that year, it was like clearly the year of Russell Westbrook. Like you have to like reward or celebrate that somehow as the league. And while and on top of that, like while some of the inefficiencies were there comparatively to like Harden, who was one of the most efficient scorers and creators of all time, like he was the team was still winning. Like they were winning games when he hit the triple doubles. He was hitting shots where the irrational confidence stuff was working this year. It was a magical year where that it just didn't matter that he was a little bit of inefficient shooter, like, or he became one of the most inefficient high volume shooters of all time. Like, it didn't matter that year. He was making game winning clutch shots over and over. And that needs to be celebrated. So, like, there's a reason he won on top of the triple double storyline. So to me, this like narrative of like he inefficient and like erratic decision making when compared to Harden's efficiencies, that stuck with him. It felt like as a storyline the rest of his career, to me anyway, and just kind of was always the butt around how people talked about him. He's like, yeah, he led the league in assists this year, but he was kind of inefficient in this area. And like, yeah, he's gonna be a nonstop force to the rim, but he might pull up for 4 threes in a row and shoot you out of a game. And some of those things are like kind of true, but I don't know. I think all the good was always generally worth the bad. And we saw it in late fits, like with Denver and Nikola Jokic. Like, that fit was incredible with Russ. I thought, like, by the numbers, by the tape, like, they clearly liked playing with each other, and like transition playmaking was a clear win, and like they were dynamic force. Like, there was ways to make Russ effective later in the career when he wasn't the most efficient shooter as well. But it tended to be when he was paired with an elite scorer or shooter that he could kind of be unlocked or unlock his driving kick, dump off playmaking. Or it was with Steven Adams in pick and roll, who we got to give a shout. Like, Steven Adams seemed to be the greatest, other than all these star shooters. He was like the most complimentary teammate he could have asked for. The one entire season highlight of passing was just pick and roll dimes to Steven Adams, where Russ is just finding new ways to throw lobs and incredible passes to Adams. And I should also mention they were complimentary in their rebounding, I think, with Adams' ability to box out and Russ's kind of ability to go get the ball and fly around and wait for it around the elbow, like point guards that rebound tend to do, and push the pace off it. And then obviously the pick and roll chemistry, like a killer teammate that led to a lot of these like assists to dunks and assists to pick in the paint and all that. So just incredible career, and just one of the most exciting players of all time. Like, it feels like yesterday he was just getting in the league and just flying down the rim, and his go-to move was the stop and pop elbow midi pull up, and that was like all he needed that as like a go-to move, and it felt unstoppable. And he's kind of been doing a version of that ever since. I think we hit on just about all the Westbrook stats that I have and accolades, but there's a few more from NBA.com, but mostly the team was better with him on the floor more than people realize.
Very winning. I mean, he won a ton, and he was extremely impactful.
So, to that point, what do you think maybe is the most underrated part about Russell Westbrook? His career, his game? Like, what do you think people get the most wrong about Russ?
Probably his turnover suppression. I mean, he made if you're going to dribble and pass the ball, you're going to have relatively high turnover rate. I mean, turnover rate stuff is a pretty flawed stat because it's just the highest turnover rate players of all time are composed of pass first players, simply because of the fact that it doesn't account for assists or passing in general. It's just turnovers relative to your scoring usage. So when you think about Russ, and when you take Russ, and how large his playmaking volume is, he had one of the largest playmaking loads in NBA history, and you rip that apart from turnover rate, and you just look at turnover rate. Obviously, it's going to skew him in a bad light. But when you look at adjusted turnover rate, which takes into account potential assists, it's pretty good. And when you go to NBARedraft.com and you look at his offensive turnover influence, it's very strong. So, like, his ability to dribble and pass a ton while being relatively low turnover, I think is definitely underrated. And he makes a couple of bad passes. Has some poor decisions here and there. But that's pretty inevitable with how high of an offensive load he took on throughout his career. I think he's a very, very high field player, has very strong cognition, and utilized that field and that cognition to suppress turnovers. Or at least he did that during the peak of his career. And I think that's probably the most underrated part.
Yeah, I agree that like his feel for the game, like getting reduced to like a super athlete with no feel, I think is where they, kind of get it wrong most, along with the personality stuff. Like people conflate like, all the maybe the scowls or whatever on the court, or the bravado of it all with how like it just by all accounts incredible person and community leader off the court, the way he
Yeah.
carries himself. So like, that too, with all the negativity that comes with the league, because it just kind of sucks the way like one of the greatest players of all time, like NBA 75 list, clearly one of the most explosive guards ever to ever play, most electric players ever. And like he just gets dogged for everything. And that's just the media world we live in, when like you're not perfect and you're not efficient in an era of analytics, and you kind of become the face of inefficiency in some ways. And that, like, I feel like the media ended up painting him worse that way than he deserved in a long sense. And I wouldn't I would say that started with MVP stuff, but like it also bounced around as the league got more analytically focused. But I think ultimately people worry too much about his scoring percentage and less about like the creation of the team, the force, the impact he had offensively, overall, to get to the paint, to create passes for others and looks for others, and advantages to create the open looks for others. I can't find a 3-point assist stat, but like anytime I would make a 3-point assist leader graph in the last like 10 years, he would be in the top 5, basically, like whether it was Russ or Harden or Luka, Ben Simmons. I don't know. Russ was always up there. Giannis among the best. LeBron's one of those guys, but I'm I'm gonna try to find one more stat about him, but that I was thinking of. But any Russ thoughts here before we can convert here to any thoughts to round out Russ's career here, celebrating Russ?
I think we have everything. Yeah, he's a great, incredible basketball player, very impactful, and a great person off the court too. I have nothing more to add. Yeah, I think we hit on everything.
All right. Well, I wanted to pull up some of his like craziest stat lines, but I'm just gonna go with these top 5: 51 points, 13 boards, 10 assists against the Suns in 2016. 50 points, 16 boards, 10 assists against the Nuggets in 2017. 51 points, 10 rebounds, 13 assists against the Rockets in 2016. 57, 13, 11 against the Magic in 2017, and 2021 against the Lakers in 2019. Just to highlight it, because it's one of those where like you kind of take it for granted. We say it real quick, like he averaged like 30, 10, and 10, but like people like might skip over, like that meant like every single night Westbrook was dropping like 35, 12, and 15, and his team like won on a buzzer beater. And it was like the ultimate league pass experience. Like NBA, it's what you want in basketball excitement, especially regular season wise. So one of the most exciting years and players of all time. So shout out Russ. We'll see what happens. Do you think, before we transition here, any chance he gets the call like around February, like, hey, maybe Miami's like, hey, we need a guard, we need some juice. There's no one left to play. Giannis got hurt. Like any possibility they make the call?
No, I think he's going out. On his own terms. He's going. He had a couple offers. He shut down.
Yeah,
I think Mark Stein reported that. So
the Wizards, right?
yeah, I think it
At
was the
least
Wizards and the Kings were wanting to get him back too. But
when you book Michael B. Jordan for the retirement announcement, you're probably pretty serious.
yeah,
You're probably pretty committed at that point.
yeah, it seems like he's closing out that chapter. So I don't think so. But who knows? Yeah, I guess you never know.
You never know. But yeah, shout out Russ. Big Three invited him, to get out there. So maybe we see him pair up with Dwight in the Big Three or something. That'd be crazy. But he's a little too good for that. But
Yeah,
we'll see. He's still great. I think he could. It's Russ. It's still like just exciting to watch him play, despite whatever Father Time catches us all. But he's still that force of nature. So. Fun player. Shout out Russ, man. Shout out Russ. Let's move on to his team where he called home for so long and made his career so special. OKC. We're gonna check in with the offseason. We'll do a full like offseason roundabout. They had a dramatic finish against the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. A pretty big offseason, I think, in terms of like Sam Presti kind of made some splashy news talking about the moves they made were to for financial flexibility for the future, and they were like clearly financially focused. I think he was pointing out. So that kind of happened with some guys going out and some new prospects coming in. But they're still so loaded that it feels like they have two or three like full lineups worth of like plus defenders and just good basketball players to roll out. So starting with maybe the series, what were your thoughts on kind of the Thunder Spurs matchup of what went wrong for the Thunder against the Spurs?
Yeah, I think the Thunder's. I think what the Spurs did really well against OKC, and put the Thunder in a tough position, and was OKC really they struggled blending their small skills and their big skills against the Thunder. I think when you think about the Thunder's biggest strength over the past 2 seasons, it's probably their ability to go small and force defensive turnovers, or not even go small, but just generally force defensive turnovers. But the speed that's required to cover a ton of ground and force a ton of turnovers obviously lends itself to playing smaller lineups like Chet Harnstein double big lineups don't force as many turnovers as one might think, even despite Harnstein forcing turnovers like a power forward, simply because they change the direction and the lateral agility and how much ground they can cover is just generally more limited. But with the Spurs, with how big, how large their aggregate size is, it's difficult for the Thunder to remain small and force turnovers. So if you go bigger, so what the Spurs do with how much aggregate size they have, it forces you to go bigger. And when the Thunder did that, their already weak shooting became even weaker, and their primary skill, which is their ability to force turnovers, became muted, and their transition scoring became muted. So the spacing was weaker. They forced less turnovers. They scored less in transition. But if they go smaller, to force more turnovers, shoot the ball more, get out more in transition, then the Spurs just completely dominated them on the glass, and took advantage of their lack of size. So I think the primaries. So yeah, I think that the Spurs is massive aggregate size put the Thunder in a tough position where they had to pick between going small or going big, and it was kind of not great either way. And they didn't really they weren't great at blending big skills and small skills. And they went out in the draft and they got Stirtz and Maurya. I don't think there was much of an at least from my perspective, I don't think there's much of an emphasis on fit, which is how I think it should be. I think Presti and the Thunder organization generally believes in taking the best player available, which I align with 100%. I very rarely account for fit in whatever mock draft I do or whatsoever. I think you got to go best player available. And yeah, I think they got two very talented, very impactful basketball players. I posted my board, and in the replies, I had like Kevin Pelton's draft pick values, where it's like he assigned. It's not as simple as the first overall pick, second overall pick, third overall pick. Obviously, each draft pick has you got to weight differently, and each draft pick has different weightings. And Kevin Pelton, back this was like a decade ago, he assigned values to each draft pick. And I took each team's. So I compared each team's draft pick relative to the play ordering of my board, and I looked at which teams got the most value relative to their draft slots. And naturally, the Grizzlies were first because they got, in my opinion, the best player in the draft at third overall pick. But
Yeah.
the Thunder were second because they got two players in my top 10. So it definitely positions them well for the future. I'm not expecting them to contribute in a major way year one, but maybe towards the end of their rookie contracts, they can be very valuable and very impactful. And now that they're on the team, we can discuss their fit. I think Sturtz is just 3-point rate in general, 3-point shooting volume in general is something that the Thunder have lacked desperately. Where we just very low 3-point rate shooting team, especially once you take Dort out of it, who carried a large amount of 3-point shooting load. You kind of have to insert someone in there, Dort and Isaiah Joe. And I think Sturtz does a really good job at that, and his ability to self create threes in general is ability to self-create threes in general, something that Thunder have never had, and something that I think will be really nice next to Shea. And Mara, while I don't think he's a particularly good Wemby defender on the ball, I think his just how much size he has off the ball, and his plus agility for someone as tall as he is could function well roaming off like Stephon Castle or someone and just mucking up the paint and forcing Wemby to take mid-range jump shots, which is the best option at this point, just trying to bait him into as many mid-range jump shots as possible. So they got two very good basketball players, got a ton of value relative to their draft slots, and I think they definitely have a clear fit and a clear role within the team moving forward. So I think it was a great draft all around, yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of great stuff there. To sum up the offseason for the listeners here from ESPN, the key additions, Mara and Stirtz, retentions, Kendrick Williams and Isaiah Hartenstein, and subtractions, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, Lou Dort are the players they traded away. They also brought in Oweh, who I've been a fan of defensively, and as he's looked like kind of a linebacker playing basketball, but like such a tough defensive guy that makes heads up winning plays, like clear instincts that when they traded Dort and brought in Oweh, it felt a little bit like a role replacement of a rookie to save some money for a guy that can maybe approximate some similar role one day as a D&3 guy, as a big guard who can at least try to hit catch and shoot threes and just kind of has a nose for the ball. And they got him pretty late as well. Like he's been on my radar for a while, but he is lacking in kind of some other areas that he's kind of like an old school Thunder pick in a way. Like they've kind of transitioned to more like all around basketball players with the dribble, pass and shoot, plus defenders, guys that can do a little bit of everything. But like when you're just rounding out the roster and you're replacing Dort, I see why they went that direction. And you mentioned and on Stirtz and Mara, like funny enough, like they seem like they fit together great. Like it seems like they got a pair that should fit together for a long time. Like whether that's on the bench or on the third team or whatever that may be, like you have like an instant pick and roll partnership. You mentioned the shooting. Stirtz is like one of the best 3-point shooters in the draft. He shot his Cerebro numbers, including high school, 636 threes on 37% from Iowa, Drake, and high school, and 150 at Drake at 38%, 200 threes on 38% at Iowa. And that's including catch and shoot and pull up. But like he was incredible at both. He 47% 3-point rate last year, and free throws. He has 629 free throws, 83% through his high school and college career. So the shooting touch indicators are there. 2.4 assists to turnover career over his career with 600 assists and 240 steals to 237 fouls and plus 40 on blocks. So positive on the stock feel ratio there as well. And obviously just was like kind of the story of the year, the player of the year, like in terms of like the Cinderella story of the year, I should say, in terms of like kind of coming out of nowhere, putting Drake on the map. They both, him and the coach, transferred to Iowa, and they dominate there again. Like he's clearly like knockdown shooter, on and off the ball, malleable role, connective offensive piece when he plays with Shea, or maybe a backup point guard creator that can come in and just kind of be another guy instead of Shea to help create offense and run the offense. And the more the merrier, because you mentioned against the Spurs. To bridge it back to that a little bit, like I mentioned a few pods ago, it felt like Shea had to solve a maze every time he was out there. Like he was seeing like a man defense that looked like a zone defense or vice versa, like where it was a mix of both, where he had to like get past his defender, two help defenders, and Wemby with a crazy amount of moves every time down. And, that's a lot on him. Obviously the Thunder, were missing a co-star like that he was missing some help, but in Jalen Williams, but like they still had a lot of depth and capable guys and could have won. Obviously, they were one of the great defenses. And And you mentioned Mara, so like I think two things can kind of help, I guess, in the Spurs matchup is kind of the point we're getting at is the more ball handlers and creators, guys that can score, shoot, and kind of create. And so it's not just on Shea to go 1-on-5 practically. It's guys in every direction. That helps, you would think. And the defense, yeah, like no one's there is no Wemby stopper, right? Like it's gonna be there's not gonna be many guys that are just one defender can stop Wemby. I would think like I don't know what your thoughts are on like actual archetype of defenders. It's probably not the tallest guy in the room like Mara. It's probably more like a guy that can get up under them. I know OG Anunoby has great stats against him, but maybe like an Aaron Gordon or OG. Yaxel and Graves kind of look like those types. Quaitnance in this year's draft, those type of guys where
Even
they're
Perez,
like 4-5. Merez, yeah, he's a ball of energy. Like these like 4-5 big wings that get up under you. That always seems to be when I. On a side note, I did like a project on Aaron Gordon's playoff run, and when the Nuggets won it all, and like he was the most. The thing that stood out about where he was most impactful was his defense as a big wing up under tall shooters like Karl Anthony Towns and Kevin Durant. Like he was very effective at slowing them down defensively, and that was vital to the Nuggets run. And that's kind of the same premise here to me is like strong 4-5 defenders, like bigger than the normal wing who can get up under the big man and make it hard to dribble for a 7-footer who it doesn't have like point guard handles. That seems like individually your best chance, but even then you just want length everywhere to your point. Like you want Mara with feel and length and size. You want the tallest guys in the league to kind of like just be at every position and make it tough for him because I do think you should kind of treat or guard Wemby kind of like he's a taller Kevin Durant in a way, but maybe more rim rolling because of that height difference and more of a rim presence. But offensively, that's how maybe he should be used best, and defensively, that's how you should treat him. So like getting up under him that way and forcing him to like dribble and take tough shots, like anyone, but especially a big like that, seems like your best chance. But it's Wemby. He might be the best player in the world, and you're just kind of trying to come up with any game plan to make life tougher. But I think Mara honestly, both of those picks feel like a check mark on the like how do we address the Spurs matchup along with everything else of just drafting the BPA. Like maybe it's a consideration, maybe it's not, but they definitely seem like they would help in that situation. And I left the
players
sorry.
Always,
Yeah, exactly. And I left the value up just to round out your thoughts on any value around the draft. Like I saw really from Caleb up, all these guys really, but Caleb Wilson, Abuko Corey, LeBaron Philon, Alan Graves, Kingston Flemings, Yaxel Lendeberg are kind of all some of my favorite picks of the draft as well. And let alone Steinbach looks like a steal for Charlotte in Summer League so far, utility guy. Was there any one of these guys that really stood out as kind of that excites you the most between a player and a team fit for where a guy's career might blossom best?
Yeah, I think the Hawks definitely need point guard that can distribute in the half court. I think Kingston Flemings is a really good fit for that, obviously, and he should pair very well next to Jalen Johnson in transition. I think Matt Powers at Draft on Twitter really. We talked about this a couple of days ago about how Kingston's defensive rebounding was really underrated. Like a 13 point something defensive rebounder is really strong for a point guard, and he pairs that with one of the best sprint times from a guard in combine history. So when you pair the fact that he defensive rebounds that well, it's so quick in the open court and passes at a pretty historic rate relative to modern day passers. Like I think if you look at assist usage by year, it's definitely gone down. If you go back to like the late 2000s, early 2010s versus look at it now, guards are definitely more scoring oriented these days, but Kingston is as good as a passer as you find relative to like besides the very pass first guys like Brandon Smith. But Kingston's just a really good playmaker. So when you blend that defensive rebounding, that speed in the open court, and that passing, he should be one of the better transition influencing guards in the league. And when you pair that with Jaren Johnson, it's a pretty good fit. And he brings that the ball handling and distribution presence in the half court. So that was a strong fit. I think Yaxel and his fit in Golden State is pretty spectacular. Obviously, they got, in my opinion, that besides Boozer and Stirtz, actually besides Boozer, I'd argue that maybe he was the best value in the draft. Sturch is a second on that graphic that's up there. Just a really strong fit with how high cognition Golden State typically plays and how high cognition Yaxo is. That was a pretty strong fit. And Allen Graves in Toronto, I mean, they're the team that's emphasized feel like cognition, physicality the most over the past half decade. And Graves and Boozer embody that as well as any draft prospect in draft history. So that was a really strong fit. I think Yaxo, Kingston, Graves were all tremendous fits for the respective teams, while also just being very, very impactful relative to where they were drafted. I think those three were definitely steals in the draft.
Totally agree. Love those guys as players here, and I love those fits too. I mean, Yaxel's been my favorite mock fit and pick since it happened, but I'm right there with it. Boozer is just so good. The idea that he fell to 3, it's like I'm not like I compared it only to like literally Jordan and Luka, literally because it happened that way in the draft in terms of the best player falling to 3, possibly. And I think that happened again this year, and it's happened a few other times. But to me, it's that it could be that dramatic just based on some of the impact numbers. Like Boozer's impact is that incredible and off the charts, and he's so great at so many things. So a great shout there. And Fleming's, as you said, like it could be a like franchise guard for Atlanta. The playmaking, the paint touches, the pick and roll ability, the pull up 3 potential. Like he's already confident there, so just getting that more efficient. And like he's a walking paint and spray pick and roll point guard that plays defense. Like he's a versatile guard, and that team is already like just the whole roster just stands out for its 2-way versatility, I think, and that he could be that like spoon that stirs the drink kind of thing for the offense that really helps put everything together and put everyone in a nice like play finishing role off of his creation, and not ask too many of these other combo guys to create. I think he's the natural creator there. So love that fit, and so many others. I mean, Phila and Okori, great value too. Graves, you mentioned, is incredible value. He could be one of the best defenders and impact guys, the hustle player, like doing all the 4-factor things that you want role players to do. Like he's off the charts on that side. So great fits. And, lastly with the Thunder here, any thoughts on kind of projecting the Thunder? Like, do you think it'll mostly feel like last year or in terms of, defense first and running things through Shea or maybe anything different this year in terms of plan of attack? I mean, they're too good and too set up to change that much because of one playoff series loss. But Wemby's good enough where like maybe a big adjustment is needed.
Yeah, I don't think too much has to be changed besides just staying healthy. I think if they stay healthy, I think if they had either one, obviously I'm biased, but I think if you have either one of AJ Mitchell or Jalen Williams, they win the series. And if they had both, I think they win Game 7 pretty maybe not decisively, but I think they definitely win the series. So I think besides staying healthy, there's not too much that has to change. Obviously, you hope that Jared McCain can take a bit of a leap and be more efficient and productive in the playoffs. And I think that should happen if they're healthy, because he'll have to. He was probably the second most aggressive player as a whole for OKC in the playoffs in terms of taking shots off the dribble, and relative to what was expected, he's probably the most aggressive player. Obviously, Shea was the most aggressive in general, but relative to what's expected from from your first option, he was a little more passive simply because he was dealing with the wrist injury throughout the playoffs. That went kind of under the radar. But McCain stepped up and took a lot of shots with the dribble. But if you get back Jalen Williams and you get back AJ Mitchell, he'll be able to play off the ball more, which is where he's supposed to be. And you hope he's able to be a bit more efficient and a bit more productive in the playoffs now that Isaiah Joe's gone. But even then, in the past few years when they won the championship, Isaiah Joe was a bit less productive and a bit less impactful in the playoffs than in the regular season, simply because of how skinny he is, how limited he is inside the arc offensively, and how much of a target he is defensively. So even then, I don't think that's that big of a priority. I think as long as they're healthy, they should contend for a championship and be able to defeat the Spurs.
Part you mentioned of like, Shea's injury, or Shea dealing with an injured hand, and the co-stars kind of being out, like important players on your team, like you have depth that can step up, but like you're not the best version of yourself, and that you've been practicing all year. And obviously they're on a similar like level of the Thunder and the Spurs feel like they're on a level almost in a tier of their own above the rest of the league. But then the Knicks come in and win it all that right then. So you never really know what's going to happen in a series. So some of it is a little bit of luck and matchup based, whether you see them again in the finals. Do you think that's the biggest challenge they've had so far in the playoffs of this version of the Thunder, was that Spurs team?
Just over the past 2 years, has the Spurs been there?
Just like the past year or two or three of this version of the Thunder, because it feels like they like. I guess my point is like it feels like they did. Maybe they got like, I don't know if this sounds right, but it seems like they got prematurely crowned as a dynasty in a way because of the draft pick asset haul that they have, and they didn't actually like get there yet. They have to start, using those picks and developing their players and winning the games, and they win the title. It's one of the best defenses ever by all the numbers, and they earn that like defensive greatness. But maybe just a little bit premature of like, this team is just going to win everything for the next 5 years. And that maybe made people downplay, I think, some of like the actual hardship that the team had to go through to even get to that point where they're playing the Spurs, and Shea's playing with like one hand, missing both his co-stars, and dribbling like through a maze of defenders still, and forcing a game 7. Like you can have a glass half full perspective on like you said, a few different bounces, a few guys are healthier. You never know. Like the team was right there, up there with anything. So like the idea that, yeah, they had to make some moves. You mentioned like Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, and I mean Aaron Wiggins is a big one. But like you have so much depth. Mara and Stirtz could be good pretty quick, and obviously you already have like I think their backups are good enough to be like considered all defensive level, like let alone their starters. So like that's how good the defense really is at times. So you've got one of the great scorers and creators of all time in Shea in the peak of his powers. You got this unicorn big still developing in Chet, who looked like he got a little bigger in the offseason. Not sure if you noted any of that or how much stock you put into that stuff, but his weight is always an interesting topic, I guess, with durability versus too much strength versus too much mobility, or which finding that balance that bigs have to find. But I think his game will pan out in the right role with that team. But just general projections, I guess. Like, do you think before, if you want to bounce to the redraft here, we'll do that. But any thoughts here on kind of the projecting the Thunder of Chet and Shea and these rookies next year? You think it basically like we're just running it back, and maybe we're gonna bust out some Stirtz Mara pick and roll a little bit more often now against bench units, and just see how that starts eating up possessions and scores?
Yeah. I think it is mostly running back and hoping to stay healthy. If one of Stirtz or Mara, if one of Stirtz and Mara are able to be particularly impactful as a rookie, I'd say Stirtz is more likely to do that than Mara, just because Mara's conditioning is a bit lackluster at this point. If Stirtz is able to prove he's an impactful player, and if he's somehow able to prove that he's an impactful player in the playoffs, we'll definitely take it. I think he's a strong fit with Mara. When you pair two high cognition players together, it's always nice, but especially with Hardenstein, with the rescreen stuff and the connecting between actions, stuff that Hardenstein is really good at. That's exactly what Sturz did at Iowa when he would drive and there wasn't any opportunity for creation. They would kick it out and connect into a second action, throw a handoff, and he'd start trying to create throw a handoff. That's kind of what Isaiah Hardenstein does. When the offense kind of dies out with OKC, they kick it out to Hardenstein and he dribbles and finds an outlet for a handoff. I think that'll be really nice. That'll be a really nice duo. And yeah, if he proves playable in the playoffs, I mean, we'll take it. But yeah, I think definitely if the team is able to stay healthy, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and we mentioned some of the turnover, but like just to round out some of the roster, they still have like so much depth, and we hit on some of it. But Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein, Shea and Caruso and J Dub and Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams, all on the team, and then you still have AJ Mitchell, Jared McCain, Nikola Topic, Cason Wallace, Kenrick Williams, Thomas Sorber down low, one of like the smarter defensive field type bigs, just like sitting on their bench, ready to go whenever. Like they just have so much defensive feel, two-way versatility, that sort of stuff that it's just incredible depth. So, lastly, do you think any player I just hit on there is like due for a big season after all these changes?
I really like Jalen Williams. I think he could be starting for the future.
He was huge in the playoff run. I mean, he was making like big shots, and like when they needed a bucket, like he came through for them almost like unexpectedly.
Yeah, his integration of defensive rebounding, 3-point shooting volume, and passing turnover versus passing volume is like pretty unprecedented in league history. It's pretty ridiculous.
Sounded like Channing Frye the way you described him there, but like a really it hits those role player traits really well with like if you're just trying to win four factors in certain ways, like that's what he's out there to do. And a great development story, right? Between like he was like kind of a tough rebounder defensive guy, and now he's like he came through for them in the playoffs a few times in this series for sure, just as a scorer and shooter.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think he's gone through pretty strong athletic development over the course of his NBA career, and he's made a lot of strides athletically. He was much better as a driver last season than in previous years. I think his cognition and how smart of a basketball player he is helps him in those situations where he has to attack closeouts, where he's aware of his athletic limitations and how smart he is as a basketball player, and he's always looking to find another passing opportunity or to extend the advantage when he's driving, and only when he has like a clear lane to drive in will he drive to the rim and take a shot. But if you're just looking at like his points per possession when he puts the ball on the floor and drives, it was better last year than previous years. So if he's able to develop a little more athletically, improve his driving a little bit more, and meet the athleticism threshold of a starting power forward, I think he could, like Chet, him and Chet, those lineups have performed pretty well over the past couple of seasons. I think he could be the starting forward of the future, especially when you lose Dort, you lose a ton of 3-point shooting volume. I think inserting Stirtz and Jalen Williams to make up for that 3-point shooting volume could be quite favorable in 2-3 years. 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot because you need guys like him to fill out the lineup, and he can plug and play like a guy that can bring defense, rebounding, 3-point shooting, and a little bit of scoring bounce in his own way. Like that's a playoff guy, a winning player, all that jazz. So that's a guy they can count on, and he's like been through the the wars with him at this point. He's been putting in his time there, so they're loaded for next year. I'm excited to see how the development looks, and I'm definitely interested to see a healthy version of this Thunder with some of this new length in the mix thrown at Wemby, and see how he deals with that. Maybe they like package together some of these guys for another big wing stopper in the realm that we've talked about, but they do have quite a bit of length to throw at them. So let's do a little 2020 NBA redraft here. We're gonna basically just take the best player available who we think, looking back, I think it's been long enough officially, about 6 years since the actual draft. I like to say guys need an average of like 5 years to really find their footing in the league, whether it's bouncing around a team or finding the right role or developing their strength or their athleticism or their shot or whatever it may be, to maybe not find their peak self, but at least kind of find their game and have the game slow down. And that's just on average. Maybe sometimes it might take longer, 3 teams, sometimes it might happen sooner right away for a guy. But that's how we judge the redraft. We were talking before the pod. I think one realization we had, or at least I had, talking about the redraft here, and we had talked about your thoughts on it as well, was how in the redraft exercise we never really think about fit. We're never thinking like, at the time I would, they already have Jabari, so I'm not taking Giannis or vice versa or whatever it is. Like there is no consideration of fit when we're doing a redraft. So why do we consider it so much more during the actual draft? And, you can really get into a lot of draft theory of like how many guys actually end up on a championship team that you draft. Is that the goal of the draft, to find guys that help you build a winner? Is it to find good basketball players to develop that you move or in a trade eventually for another player? Or is it can kind of be, it's kind of always being aware of all your options and doing a little bit of both when you're in the front office. But, the actual point of the draft is to get the best player available. But what does that mean? And I think there is a little bit of a conversation of like, win now, best player available, best person or best basketball player to help you win now, versus the best prospect available long term, and who might be the most realistic potential star one day based on certain traits. And that's definitely the biggest challenge of the draft to me. I think a guy like Yaxel is a great example, where he's a little bit older. People are a little lower on his maybe individual scoring star potential, but he has super high BPM ratings. He's going to be an incredible fit, doing everything Steph needs next to him with defensive versatility and playmaking hub handoffs and rebounding and connected playmaking, some post-up scoring and mismatch scoring, and just strong play, a strong front court player next to him. Like he's going to have incredible impact, incredible stats. He's going to win right away probably and help them win right away. He'll fill out the box score. He might not be the most high volume efficient scorer, but he's going to do a little bit of everything and help the team win. But I still have that very highly. I'm like top 7. I had him like top 5 or top 7 on my board. But there's a trade-off of like star scorer potential, I guess. And that's kind of what people value at the top of the draft, is the guys that can score or create offense or that project to be the best player one way or another. And there's a ton of different ways to go about it. So, but it is interesting that like a lot of that conversation gets thrown out the window for a redraft. And that's where we are here, to just kind of draft the best players available based on how we kind of think, how we view their game today. And I do think we're playing the results a little bit, and I wonder what you think about that aspect of it, of like, they do end up on a team in one city, in one organization, and either get the support or they don't. They either get the right situation and role and touches and shots, or they don't. And some guys pan out and some don't. And who do we credit for that development and failure or success? Is it the player, the prospect, the team? It's interesting. Do you have any thoughts on all that I just threw at you before we start here?
Yeah, no, I think there are definitely certain teams that optimize players, whether it's
especially how we should evaluate draft results, I think is what I meant to ask.
Yeah, no, I think there are definitely certain teams that optimize player and get more juice out of the squeeze relative to other teams. I think, like, whether it's more of a more acute awareness of where they're struggling and a better player development system, or more of an acute awareness of what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and how to optimize them in a certain system. There are definitely certain teams that do it better than other teams. I think the Celtics come to mind. They juice every single center that they have in their impact metrics, or like the Thunder. Pretty much every player that the Thunder draft end up, even if they're all strong defenders coming in, even if most of them are strong defenders coming into the NBA, they end up hitting like their 100th percentile outcome in terms of defensive impact, or even when they're not known for their defense coming into the NBA, like J-Dub, AJ Mitchell, and whatnot, they end up hitting their 100% of the defensive outcome. Whether it's because of the player development systems in place or the optimization within scheme, there are definitely certain teams that get better results out of players than others. And it's always a tough answer. There's no definitive answer as to how much can you attribute it to a player, or how much can you attribute to a team. But if you look at trends over time, there are definitely certain teams that get more juice out of the squeeze from certain players, like the Celtics with their bigs and Thunder with their wings on defense. And I guess you just got to account for that. Yeah, like the Chris will probably have a better outcome than the majority of us outcomes if he got drafted by another team. And Stirtz, he's
It's
in
a
a
good
system
shot.
where he can take advantage of his cognition and force teams to turnovers. He'll probably end up having a better defensive outcome than if he did in another system like Sacramento or Milwaukee or something, or I'm just naming random teams there. But yeah, it's there's no definitive answer. It's a pretty interesting question, but I think if you can identify a team that juices or a certain archetype of player or certain position of players, and you try to account for it, that's probably the best answer that I have.
Yeah, and like to that point, I think ultimately like you're judging the team based on their decision, and most of the time the teams are looking for specific archetypes of players that fit their system or like preference, whether it's a build, whether it's a statistical calculation of like offensive rebound percentage and steal percentage, and we want these guys that do these things well. And judging or evaluating like did they take players or prospects that they can maximize their game that fit their system, like where it's kind of a like everybody wins scenario. Like the prospect you take should be in a situation and role where he has room to succeed, and he has to show up and actually show out and follow through with all his promise in his game. But like it, I come back to like judging a fish by if he can fly or not, like it, as the basic metaphor, like that, like generally applies to how we should kind of judge all the outcomes. I think in one way or another, but it's a results league, and the players have to kind of adjust to their situations, and some guys are it's easier to adjust for others. But I agree with a lot of those shouts where situation and role and opportunity is everything for these guys, and it like getting the best situation possible for your development is ideal, because a lot of these habits and winning habits kind of stack up, and you can just kind of generally become better at little things by being in those environments, and especially in on teams that cover up your flaws and allow you to just play to your strengths. And that's, I think, what finding the right lineup balance is all about in basketball, where you just find guys that naturally cover up each other's game, and they become a force greater than their parts. So, let's get skip over here to the actual NBA redraft, and I'm gonna. Do you want the number one pick? We didn't discuss it here, dude. Do you feel like you know who you want with the number one pick? I'll put you on the spot if you're ready.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah.
All right, with the number one pick in the 2020 Learning Basketball NBA Redraft, Maurya selects.
With the benefit of hindsight bias and knowing the availability of players, I'll probably go Tyrese Haliburton. If we're just
Nice.
judging players off an impact standpoint, I think it's pretty close between LaMelo and Hallie, but Hallie's just played way more games, so I'll go with him.
That's a fun one. Hard to go wrong there. I mean, it seems like the whole league is looking for the next Haliburton, whether it's in the draft. Who was it? Keaton Wagler got a little bit of that comp with the decelerating ability and the pull-up shooting and all that. But, everyone wants their next pace-pushing tall point guard that can hit the pull-up three and get to the rim at will and just rack up good decisions and that high feel decision-making. So great shout there. And, I am a little torn here between a few names. Anthony Edwards is pretty up there for electric play, and Maxey and Bain are knockdown three-point shooters. By the way, this is one of the deepest, like looking back, one of the deepest draft classes I can remember. Obviously, there's like all-time drafts, but it sneaks up on you how deep and talented this 2020 NBA draft is. Like multiple stars, all NBA guys, all stars, and just so deep with like role players and even playoff guys. But with the second pick, I am going to go with LaMelo Ball. I love the versatility of his game, the 3-point shooting, the connective playmaking. Ultimately, like they're paired together, him and Ant this year, and Ant will likely lead the team in scoring, and LaMelo will kind of supplement that. But like between his like just incredible feel for the game, electric playmaking and 3-point shooting and handoff ability and give and go ability, like the quick decision making, the obviously popular off the court with the shoes and the highlights, but like he's just electric play. And I think the 3-point shooting, the effective flair, the playmaking of LaMelo Ball does translate to winning impact, despite some low light decisions that people tend to carry around with him. But like he gets dragged a little too much, I think, for that stuff. He's electric to watch.
Yeah, great player. He's very impactful when he does play, for sure. It's a good player.
Yeah, and we'll have some dunks and threes stats available for some of this. I mean, he was 4.8 offensive EPM last year, 4.5 overall EPM. Obviously, Haliburton didn't play, so that left LaMelo as the highest of any of these players, any player left there. But Ant and Maxey were quite high as well. So I imagine that's one of your next picks.
Yeah, I'll go with I'll go Anthony Edwards. Yeah.
Ant-Man.
It's tough to pick between Maxey and Ant. I'm a little lower on Maxey just because he is 6'2" with that. He's just 6'2" shooting guard. His passing volume is really rough for a guard, even if he is incredibly turnover averse. Obviously, very impactful. But I probably prefer Anthony Edwards just because of size. They're ultimately two players that don't pass well enough to play point guard and are kind of pigeonholed as wings or shooting guards. And I'll go Ant because of size. Yeah.
It's a fun choice. Ant's a walking highlight, another explosive dunker, kind of like Russ in that way, just a dunker 3 highlight like every night, basically. I could have gone number 1 here. He's electric. He ended up relatively high on the impact, plus 3.6 offense and 3.1 overall. I'll go with Tyrese Maxey here because I think that is kind of where I would debate back and forth, but it's tough. Shout out Desmond Bane. It hurts not to take him here. I'll lean Maxey for like the speed element, I think, because they both are just such snipers from deep. But like, I don't know. I think I'll go with the speed of Maxey, but it hurts a little. It hurts.
Yeah. But that's I'm sure it's tough to put the Magic hometown bias aside. But yeah, I think Maxey's the better player for sure. Yeah.
So that leads us to the next pick, and they like talk about top 4 picks in a NBA draft that. If it was redrafted this way, the draft debates of like, who would you like being in if you knew with retrospect and you were on draft Twitter and you were debating like who you want to build a team around, like peak Tyrese Haliburton, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, or Tyrese Maxey or Desmond Bane. It's like got some pretty killer choices off the top 4 or 5 here to start building out an offense. And some other fun guys as well that we'll get to. So with the 5th pick here, who are you looking at?
I'll take Bane Pritchard.
Yeah.
I mean,
Bane. How good? Oh wow! I'll put some respect back on your name in a minute, Bane. How did Peyton Pritchard get picked right now? I get impact wise, he is right there with Bane, but still,
he's really good. I mean,
Desmond Bane, he's really good. That's really all the reason you need.
I mean. Yeah, I think it's the blow to your shoulder creation load. I prefer that over Bane.
Pritchard's like ability to scale up has been insane. I think Niall maybe had that tweet, or somebody had that tweet a while back of like just some GM has to yell at Peyton Pritchard or something.
Yeah, there's Niall. Yeah, that was a great shout.
Yeah. It was like you could talk about it, but like he's kind of underrated. Eric Weiss as well has talked about him on the pod before. Underrated in like the ball handling and just kind of doing a little bit of everything. Kind of like how Stirtz brings a little bit of everything. Like he can run some offense, pick and roll, hit the 3 on and off the ball, defend a little bit. Like all around basketball player. So, and to your point, 1.7 overall EPM to Bane's 1.8, and Pritchard was a point higher offensively and about a point lower defensively.
Yeah, I prefer looking at expected EPM, and that Peyton Pritchard's 2.6 there, Bane 1.8, but I think he's just better basketball.
Yeah, I was using actual EPM to be clear.
Yeah, they're both really good players. So is Desmond Bane your pick at 6?
Yeah, I gotta go Desmond Bain here. I think he's one of the best shooters. Not named Steph Curry in the league. If it like he's up there with anyone, especially like he'll make some incredible shots. He throws something of a knuckleball from like his shoulder sometimes, but like it goes in and it doesn't matter. Last year he was used a lot on the ball as a driver. This year, I'm just hoping we get a system that kind of feeds a little more into Bane being set up for three, whether it's around off screens, whether it's handoffs or driving kicks from Paolo and Franz or Wendell at the elbow or whoever they use, but just more Bane 3-point centric because like he's just one of the most efficient scorers and shooters in the league. He's fresh off like I think he just missed the 50-40-90 club at 20 points a game, like just missed it. That would have put him with like 5 of the all-time great most efficient scoring seasons, and still is up there. Just didn't quite hit that mark, but was right there. So just a really efficient, like underrated for his driving ability and a bit like he held the Magic's offense together last year and played every game, durable 82 games, and like the offense looked a little reductive because like there was only so many NBA players, among other reasons, available, and he was the best option. So running the offense through him, he was efficient, and that turned out to be kind of their best option, even though, like, we all wanted to see some more off-ball movement for Bane. So hopefully that's what we get this year. And I think we could see his, like, there's a world where he's, like, getting the most shots and threes on this Magic team, and he's an all-star from it and really has a even more efficient scoring shooting season because the other guys are asked to play make, hopefully, and he's asked to do more of the play finishing, shooting, and scoring. That's what I really hope the team looks like. So that's the world I'm envisioning. And we saw the Celtics could do something similar in the sense of they sent Jaylen Brown out, they brought Paul George in, and Pritchard's probably going to get a lot more touches and bigger role as well. So he's another guy that could kind of see higher impact next year. So I can see how you end up there. So can't wait to see. I'm excited to see what it looks like with Bane in Orlando. Let's go with the 7th pick here.
Yeah, I'll take Bane out. Yeah.
All right.
Came off a pretty strong season. He's a pretty strong driver in the half, or just drove a ton and had a good amount of success doing it. Pretty good passer. His defense took a bit of a decline with his overall impact, but he's a really strong driver, passes well. I think he rebounds well. So it's a good player. I'll take him at 7.
Absolutely. I think he made the All-Star team, right? Like he was a walking bucket for Portland this year, and he drew a lot of fouls, but like he was effective doing it, and he was and kind of a one-man show when it came to their offense a lot of times. So like a good shout there. I'm gonna go with Paul Reed for some defense. Let's get a defensive stopper out here. 3.6 EPM last year, 2.4 on the defensive side, but a 1.2 on the offensive side as well. So that you get a little two-way impact with Paul Reed.
Yeah, he's really good.
And just one of the most monster defenders in the league. And it's cool to see him kind of become a plus offensive player as well. Because to me, that's how you get on the floor in the playoffs. Is you can be the elite at either side, but you got to hold your own a little bit positive on the other side, and just don't hurt your team too much, or else you're going to get a runoff. So shout out Paul Reed.
Yeah, he's a really good player. Really good player. He's blossomed. He's a very good basketball player for sure.
All right, you're up.
I'll take. Devin Vassell.
All right.
With him. He's a pretty prototypical wing.
Yeah, that's a fun choice. I mean, comes in as like a defensive wing, and then like now he's like this like tough mid-range assassin, tough shot making mid-range assassin. It's like cool fun to see out of Florida State.
Really good shooter, yeah. Very valuable wing player, yeah.
And like a quick example of like now that he's on this defense in San Antonio, where he was sometimes like the worst defender of the floor. Like when he's your worst defender at times, like that's incredible because it kind of brings out his defensive instincts a little bit, where like even though it's not his go-to, like that's not, it was what he was profiled as was a two-way wing, and then it kind of like faltered a little bit, I think, on his impact early on in those Spurs teams, maybe because they weren't in the most like competitive situations. But now that they're like competing and you're a part of a defensive lineup, I think it just kind of activates the defender a little bit more when you know you can trust everyone around you and all that. So you kind of you have the potential for high two-way impact just sitting in there if you kind of get the situation and the role right. And last year they definitely did. He's just a fun player. Like he can go off any quarter. I caught him live go off for like 5 threes, 15 points in the third quarter once. Like I paid to see Wemby and left with the Devin Vassell show, just like knocking down threes left and right. Good times seeing a fun Florida State player. I'll throw him on this board here. We're gonna go with the next pick. Might have to, man. I would go with defense here, but I'm gonna go Emmanuel quickly. A little offensive spark plug here. He's got one of the highest offensive EPM and actual EPM left, but just a walking bucket, shooter, scorer, speedy guard that can, stretch the floor offensively.
This is the 9th pick. I'm on the clock, right?
Yes, you're on the clock, and it's, I don't even know. It might be the 11th pick by now.
With the 11th overall pick, I'll take Isaiah Joe. Really strong movement shooter, really good spot up shooter. He is a little bit of handling and passing when he's forced to get run off the line. I think his low his low mass, how skinny he is, and his defense struggles limit him in the playoffs. But ultimately, really strong shooter with a little bit of dribbling and passing skill.
That's a great shout. Good two-way player there. There are some interesting two-way role players left here, but I feel like I gotta go. I just like Onyeka Okongwu's game too much. I can't let him go slide any longer. I'm still buying Okongwu's two-way versatility as a defender and a play finisher, and I'm excited to see him this year. Maybe next to Fleming's have some interesting chemistry, and next to Jalen Johnson. I'm not out on Okongwu, so I'm going with my guy. And shout out Pat Will. I'm not going to draft him anymore, but I was really high on Pat Will this draft. I'm probably not going to take him in this redraft, but shout out Pat Will. He was a fun athlete off the bench. It's another one where who knows what would have happened in a different context, but it didn't really work out very well in Chicago, and not great on the winning stat players. But on to the next pick.
Yeah, no, I think Okongwu is a really good player. I don't know, I slipped by. I probably would have taken him a little bit earlier, but I'm happy with Isaiah Joe pick. I'll take Jaden McDaniels with the
it's about time.
Yeah.
He was sliding a little bit, but he was next. He's another fun defender there. I'm tempted by two guys. No, I think I got to go with one of these guys. So I'll go with Obi Toppin here. He's a big play finisher, exciting player for the Pacers. Like proved he could be a role player on a good team.
Yeah, no, he's I think he had a really impactful season last year. His impact metrics are definitely good. So yeah, I think that's a good pick to round it out. Yeah,
absolutely. That was 15. There you go. So I was also thinking maybe Jalen Smith, a little stretch 5, and shout out Beef Stew and Trey Jones. There's some assist guy, and the assist to turnovers for the Jones guards are unreal. And Beef Stew is just, brings that energy every night. But like Aaron Naismith, Cole Anthony, Najee Marshall, Isaac Okoro, Patrick Williams also to round out this draft. Like this class is just very deep with a lot of talent. So it was kind of fun to just run through those names again and think about who you would build an offense around between, Haliburton, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey, or even Pritchard or Bain or Avdija. I mean, that's, 7 potential all-stars in this class. Pretty crazy. All right, man. Thanks a lot. That was a lot of fun. Always fun talking hoops. And so we had to celebrate Russ with the abrupt end of his career. Glad he went out on his own terms. And, it's a shame the way the media covered him. So hopefully we can at least kind of turn that page and celebrate how great he really was at his peak as, just unstoppable and one of the greatest playmaking guards, decision makers, paint touch dunkers, explosive athletes, walking highlights, irrational, confident shooters and one of the greatest scorers, playmakers, point guards of all time.
Yeah, no, great player. I'm glad to have gotten on this podcast and recapped his career with you. It's definitely a very impactful player. Yeah.
Had to be done, man. Thanks for taking the time today, Maurya. Check out at the Flair Screen on Twitter and his work on Swish Theory. Always fun talking hoops, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, RK. Anytime. It was a great time.
We'll do it again sometime soon. Have a good one.
Thank you, too.